Hey, I'm Sven Masterson, one of the co-founders and principal mentors in the Mentoring Men community. And in this video, I want to talk to you about a typical pattern that we see in pretty much every unhappy marriage that we encounter when a man reaches out to us. If we talk to a lot of men, hundreds of men actually a year, about things like separation, divorce. We talk to a lot of men who just heard, I need space, I'm having an affair. We've talked to a lot of men who hear, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And really, there's a common denominator behind pretty much most failing marriages we encounter. Now, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying if you're watching this and your marriage failed that that this is the cause. We're not trying to be so all or nothing about this. We're just sharing a common pattern that we see, the men who connect with us. And I want you to understand that men connect with us because they recognize this pattern. So we're very aware that there are other things that contribute to marriages failing in the world, and we're not trying to say that this is the cause of all of them. But this is simply a pattern that we see in hundreds and hundreds of men a year all over the world, despite their culture, despite their age. Now, at the root of these men's unhappiness, even though it doesn't look like it at first, we ultimately find that they have a deep sense of insecurity. They're not walking around in their day-to-day life saying, I'm insecure, I'm insecure. They're just living under a belief system where what they want, need, and desire is not something that they believe they can source within. And so they have fundamentally an insecurity for those things. Let me talk about this as though we were talking about a man's need for water. If a man didn't believe he had water, he has the capacity to create his own water, he's going to feel that water is technically insecure, meaning somebody else manages that man's access to water. So you could say that that man's water was only secure in so much as his source was secure. And so when we have an insecure source for something like water, well, we have a neediness for water. We know from life that if I don't drink water, you don't drink water, we perish. And so water is a critical need that we need to make sure we have a reliable source. And when you don't, that's an insecurity with water, which unfortunately many people on planet Earth live with an insecure source of water. Now, when you have that insecurity and you need to go somewhere to get your water, then you have now a dependency. Now, let's suppose you get water from a nearby property or a neighbor. And most of that time, your neighbor's cooperative. They're happy to share that water with you. But something happens. Maybe you get in an argument, you disagree on something, and that neighbor says, you know what? I don't want to share my water with you anymore. Well, you have this dependency upon water. And because you have that dependency, if the neighbor stops giving you that water, you begin to judge them. You create stories in your head. Well, if they were a good person, they should do this, they should do that, they should stop doing this, they should stop doing that. And that judgment leads to blame. I don't have water, it's your fault. And now when you're living in a relationship of blame, you create distance. It's not like people that blame each other tend to get together for meals and intimate encounters. That's counterintuitive, right? And so with that distance from the source of what you need comes more insecurity. Now I want to talk about this in marriage because this is the pattern. A man unknowingly has a deep sense of insecurity for something that feels pretty fundamental to him. Now when we help men distill this down in mentoring sessions and in our coursework, they ultimately usually come to something, a distilled root need of a sense of value and worth and significance. They describe that as validation. They describe it, they think what they need is connection. They think what they need is intimacy. But these are all strategies, actually, that they use to try to meet even deeper needs. And those deeper needs are really existential needs. That means they're really needs about a man's knowledge and view of self. It's how he feels about him. And because men alive today mostly are living in stories where other people define those things, they naturally create neediness on other people. just like that water. See, if I don't know that I have value and worth and significance, well, then I ask someone else to define that for me. I'm needy for it, and I create a dependency, and I create a dependency on someone other than me. When we're children, we do this to mom and dad. We do it to siblings. We do it to school and university instructors. We do it to neighbors. We do it to friends. And oftentimes when we get married, we transfer the person who's responsible for meeting our dependency from mom and dad or friends to sweetheart, to honey, to dear, to wife. And then throughout a marriage, as the marriage goes on, what ends up happening is you start to cultivate this judgment. You start looking at your spouse and you see that they're doing something and you feel your need and you say, wait a minute, why aren't you meeting my need? A really, really, really common way this comes up right now for men is that men get fixated on their wife's use of her cell phone. They get fixated on how she spends her free time. This is really, really common in men who are fathers with young children. A man starts to feel like he's at work all day. He comes home. He wants his wife's attention. He doesn't know that his desire for her attention is actually him feeling his insecurity. And so he judges how she spends her time, her focus, her attention, her energy, and all, again, based on dependency and need and insecurity. And so he starts judging her. And he develops this inward narrative that he's angry, he's irritated. Men reach out to us all the time about, why won't my wife get off her cell phone? If she would just this, if she would just that. And a man cultivates this she focus. The she focus is really judgment, and it leads to blame. And that man kind of has this story inside. Well, if she would do something differently, I would feel differently. Therefore, it's her fault. And he starts to blame his unhappiness, his sense of feeling a lack of respect, a lack of appreciation. He starts to focus all of that on his partner. Why his partner? Because she is the one on whom he's created the dependency. You see, everywhere we're insecure in life, we create a dependency on something outside of us for that thing in which we are insecure. And then we judge and blame how that person handles our need. This is even visible in momentary truths. For example, if I write a comment on Facebook and somebody says something nasty to me, I might feel an immediate neediness-based dependency for that person to like me. And I will judge them and blame them maybe for not liking me because that makes me feel insecure. Or maybe I go into some sort of mode of trying to make that person like me by being nice. See, in both of those cases, I'm actually responding to insecurity, even though I don't know the person. Why would I try to please somebody I don't know? Why would I try to judge somebody I don't know? You see, I only do it when I have a dependency on that person. We judge the object on which we depend. We have those dependencies because of insecurity. And in a marriage relationship, when this is at work, when this neediness and dependency has led to you judging your spouse and blaming them, well, it creates distance, more distance, right? No woman likes to be around a man from whom she feels blamed, just like men do generally not want to be around and connected with a woman who it feels like is blaming him. And when we're doing this in a certain stage of marriage called the disillusionment stage, when you're already struggling to feel connected, that mutual blame that's often going on is creating distance. And unfortunately, the byproduct of distance is it feeds more insecurity. And the more insecurity arises, the more neediness arises. The more neediness is taking place in the relationship, well, the more dependency and the more judgment and the more blame and so forth. And this slowly over time creates what you've heard me refer to in videos as emotional enmeshment. It's the belief that everything I need is in my partner who's not cooperating. Therefore, I'm angry with them, I resent them, I build up contempt for them, and I have distance from them. All while another part of me wants closeness and connection and intimacy, which I'm getting less and less and less because this process is at work. This is what begins to undermine relationships. And this is what we spend the majority of our time helping men with in our platform, because when both partners are doing this, and this is usually the case, somebody has to break out of this cycle first. Now, a lot of times in marriage therapy, marriage counseling, etc., there's an attempt to try to get both partners to exit this kind of thinking at the same time. I believe that some people are really gifted at that. Some counselors and therapists have a great capacity for that, and I don't have any disparaging remarks to make about that. However, we do find, and the Gottman Institute seems to agree with this, that what a man does in the relationship is critical for this process. And so we find if we help the man in the relationship exit this loop, that things begin to turn around. Because when one man solves his insecurity, now the other partner there's some room there. They're not feeling the judgment. They're not feeling the blame. They're not feeling the neediness, and they're not distancing. And it creates a positive kind of feedback loop that begins to turn a death spiral into a slow and steady climb upward and to higher altitude. I've seen this in my own marriage. I've seen it in hundreds of marriages over the last, I don't know, four or 5 years. And it's a reliable and predictable pattern. And when we help men with that, they see that. So let's look at, now that we've looked at an unhappy marriage and what's typically going on, let's look at a happy marriage. And I want to do so with another visual. And that is, you know, what turns this around? Well, remember in the last one, we had this idea of insecurity. Well, another word for the absence of insecurity, other than security, would be self-reliance. And so I put the root change here because if I put security here, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense, because your question would be, well, how do I become secure? Well, you become secure by moving all of those external dependencies that you have never trusted yourself to have inward. Now, a lot of people hate and misunderstand this word self-reliance. They think we're talking like some sort of doomsday prepper thing, like I'm going to tell you to get toilet paper and Band-Aids and stash them in your basement. I'm not talking about that kind of self-reliance. I'm talking about learning that you are already a whole human being, and because you are a whole human being, you already have value and worth and significance. You don't need to look outside of you. You don't need to rely on people outside of you for those things. You can get them inside. And when you really learn this and you learn how to go about a transformation in your life where you look inside, what you find is, I'm whole. I'm whole. I'm not living like a person who's got their sense of self distributed all over the place to a partner and friends and parents and colleagues and siblings. You take all that back, you realize, man, I have asked people to be a source for all kinds of my well-being, and that's not serving me. And so when you bring all that back, you begin to rely upon your internal source, where you used to look at an external source. And that produces a tangible sense of wholeness and value and worth. And you feel that. And because you feel that, you naturally stop the dependency process on other people. You release the pressure. And pressure, if women are watching this video, know is a relationship killer. Women do not like to feel pressure. In reality, men don't like to feel pressure either, but they feel it in a different way. It's usually the pressure to go out and earn more, to work harder, and to be a better man, right? We all feel pressure. All of us resent pressure from other people. It's a natural phenomenon. And that pressure oftentimes is there because of dependency. So when we take dependency away on other people, it replaces the pressure that we used to give, the dependency that we used to create, with openness. We're open towards them. We're not judging our partner anymore because we're not sitting there critically evaluating how are they using their time, how are they using their energy, how are they using their focus. The whole reason we were doing that is because we were judging their use of their time, their life, and energy because it was a threat to us having our dependency-based needs met. And when I don't have dependency-based needs met anymore, I naturally stop judging the people that I was getting those things met. Let's go back to the water, for example. If I have my own well on my own property, I don't need to critically watch and wring my hands about how my neighbor uses his water. It's up to him. I could care less because it's his water. He can use it how he wants. And I'm not in any way threatened by how he uses his water. I have my own well. Okay? And so where we used to have judgment, we naturally find we have acceptance, meaning I look at people around me and I just approve and accept them because there's no basis to judge them anymore. I don't have any issue with how they use their time and energy because I don't have any dependency upon that. Now, what you find in humans, especially if you have children, you know this when kids are born, is that we have a natural warmth about us. And really the only time we're not warm is when we're feeling this loop of judgment and dependency and neediness and blame that kind of shuts our heart down. It puts us up in our head and we start to get cold towards the person. And we're cold again because we're feeling threatened. Our insecurity looks like it could be a problem. And when you take this away, then we go kind of back to our natural state like we are as kids, and we're open-hearted and we're warm. We appreciate. We're not putting conditions upon people. And the natural result there is that we're attractive. We're attractive to our partner. People like to be around warm and open-hearted people who do not make demands on them, who are not blaming, who are not childish, who are not needy, and who are not dependent. Now, that kind of also provides a positive feedback loop in men. So when a man witnesses, hey, you know, the more self-reliant I am, the more I feel whole and better and open and accepted, and people seem to like to be around me. And it produces every reason and motivation then to continue the process. And so we find when men start down this path and they start getting this natural feedback, they become more self-reliant. And again, they're not becoming stoically disconnected from other people. They're not becoming people that are cold and hard to be around. Quite the contrary. They're people that everybody wants to be around. And that's because they can be generous instead of needy and manipulative and transactional. These people are full. They're wholehearted. They have a sense of vitality that they can share. And they're doing that because they're not distributing all of their sense of self in other people and then trying to manipulate them to get it back. Now, I hope this has given you some insight into maybe your own life, your own marriage. I believe these things are true in both men and women, though in our community we focus on helping men. And it's not because we don't care about women, it's because, well, we're men and we're most qualified to help men. And we find in a family, in a marriage, in a long-term relationship, if we can get a man squared away in these things, it changes the dynamic in his relationship, in his family, in his neighborhood, in his community, and so forth. If we have made you curious today with this video, I want to invite you to scroll down in the description and look for a link where you can connect with us. You can set up a complimentary session with myself or one of our other mentors or apprentices who can talk to you a little bit more about these things. Or if you want to just jump right in and take a look at what our community has to offer, you'll see another link below where you can scroll down and take that for a spin and see just what kind of stuff we talk about. If you like this content, we go 100 times deeper in our community than these things, and just tons and tons and tons of content and courses and conversations, and all of that is available within the Mentoring Men community for $25 a month. I hope you're inspired. I hope you're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel maybe in your unhappy marriage, and I hope to see you on the other side of this camera sometime. Until then, enjoy your day. I'll talk to you soon.